Commercial Bay is an ambitious urban transformation. It's not a project which exists in isolation, but rather a completely connected piece of the city. And in that regard, Commercial Bay is completely unique. It has the power to change the experience of the city.
It's arguably the most important site in Auckland at the moment. Auckland is a harbour city. It's right at that liminal edge between land and sea. It's number 1 Queen Street. It's the gateway in every sense.
When you think about the city centre, downtown Auckland is only 0.8% of the whole of the surface area of Auckland, yet 7.7% of the nation's GDP. It is the epicentre, it's the engine room of the New Zealand economy.
The project is costing us in the order of $700 million. We think it'll be worth a lot more than that when we're finished. But I really don't measure it on finance. I think the key to success here is going to be, once it's finished, to hear Aucklanders say, let's meet at Commercial Bay.
Commercial Bay introduces an absolutely new level of retail and food and beverage into the Auckland CBD. It creates amazing public spaces. It delivers transport connectivity. It enables Auckland's most important investment in the city rail link. Connects the entirety of Auckland's waterfront in one seamless experience from Britomart in the east to Wynyard in the west. And it creates amazing workplace outcomes in the tower itself.
When we bought the site, we spent an enormous amount of time understanding what the city rail link meant. And really what we saw was an opportunity to put an amazing development right adjacent to a key public transport node. Our approach was to go and sit down with council and say, look, we can build this piece for you, let's future-proof the site. If we design it together at the same time in one structure, it means that we'll forever get the best out of this site.
Auckland has been very poorly served, especially by transport investments in the last 60 years, which has flooded the place with cars and made it dreary, basically. So this is about city building. The logic of the city is the efficient use of space. There will be 10,000 people working in these 2 blocks, and that is only possible with a spatially efficient transport system. So the quality of what can be achieved above ground is entirely dependent on what we build below ground first.
Auckland needs the city rail link because it unlocks the latent potential of the entire region. At the moment, we have an entire rail system ending at a cul-de-sac. What the city rail link will do is build 3 new stations, pretty much underground in Auckland CBD, and that will double the efficiency of the entire rail network.
It will allow around 36,000 people to arrive every hour into the centre of the city without their cars. So this enables a complete blossoming of the inner city as a vibrant, intense, thriving place. This is the biggest shape changer that will happen in our lifetimes in Auckland. It's hard to overstate the value of this project.
So look, we're standing here on the overbridge that provides access over Albert Street from the west, so this will arrive in the new centre at level 1. What you see out in this direction will be 3 levels of high quality retail, a major laneway that runs right through in an east-west direction that's aligned on the centre line of one of Auckland's finest heritage buildings. I think one of the greater aspects of the scheme is that the existing buildings on the site are going to be completely integrated into the project, so number 1 Queen here in Zurich. The lower levels of these existing buildings are a seamless part of the retail and food and beverage experience. You can just start to see here the curve of the CRL that runs from the CPO building right round and up Albert Street. We're almost at the lowest level of the excavation here now. The steelwork you're starting to see over here as the base of the tower as it straddles the CRL, and some of the complex steel transfer structures you're seeing there enable the tower to sort of nimbly leap over the tunnels beneath.
One of Auckland's greatest attributes is the harbour, and the opportunity to mesh the HSBC building into the retail really unlocked not only Quay Street but also the harbour views, and in fact one of those opportunities right now is a car park. and it's probably the best piece of real estate in New Zealand. We decided 5 or 6 years ago that there's a great opportunity to really own concentrated real estate and have a number of buildings that are meshed together by amenities like retail and services. If you go to any major city globally, what activates a city is the retail edges and the streetscape.
I think the retail experience at Commercial Bay will be genuinely unique. We have looked hard around the world for relevant benchmarks, and we think we're doing something that's actually new and distinctive.
We did not want a concrete box that was inward facing. We wanted a unique city experience that was outward facing and a place that people just found themselves in.
They've turned the old mall inside out. This is a building in the round. This is open on all 4 sides, activated to street level. People will flow through and in it at various porous points. So it ceases to be an obstacle for the public and becomes public space.
The intention is to create a dramatic urban experience that's seamlessly connected into the laneway system of Auckland. We want to make this an open invitation to all Aucklanders. It's a threshold-free environment where everyone is welcome.
In the 60s, there was a wonderful series of heritage buildings which framed Lower Queen Street. Queen Elizabeth Square was created through the demolition of those buildings, and the whole downtown waterfront edge took on a sort of a semblance of a place that was designed very much for rush hour traffic. So spaces were overly generous, were windswept and cold.
If you think as a person on their feet rather than a driver, the driver brings her environment around with her, the sound, the smell, the temperature, but the pedestrian, the person on the street, is entirely a guest of what has been built.
Queen Elizabeth Square was a remnant space sitting behind a major high-rise development. It was widely derided as being a mistake right from its inception. We saw an opportunity to return Lower Queen Street to its former spatial form, with retail fronting onto Lower Queen Street and activating that space.
Really what Commercial Bay is doing is a bit like what we describe architecture does and urban design does, is it repairs the city.
What we've created is a really high-performance public space right in front of Auckland's finest heritage building. It's a linear public space, it's closed to traffic, it's prioritised for pedestrians. It's of an appropriate scale that it would feel intense and active at all stages of the day. And we think that intensity and exchange and the humanity are all incredibly powerful outcomes.
Transforming cities isn't something that the councils or governments do alone. Without the private sector, it'll only be partly done. What you need to do is work out a way in which you can build sort of public-private partnerships where you bring the skill sets of both, the vision of both, and also the budget of both to bear on a site.
The complexity of Commercial Bay is also its greatest strength, which is true collaboration between client and local government. And that's delivered an outcome that would have been completely impossible for any of those parties working in isolation. In New Zealand, the financial context of any project is very lean, and it means we have to be creative, and it means we have to work harder than projects in other cities and in other environments around the world. Commercial Bay is a unique outcome because of the presence of the CRL tunnels which run beneath the location of the tower. That forced us really to adopt a structural form which relies on steel perimeter bracing. As opposed to a conventional concrete framed building with a centre core, it's a side core typology, which means that all of the servicing and the vertical circulation within the building are removed to the side of the floor plate, enabling a completely clear rectangular floor plate for the contemporary workplace.
What we pushed the design team particularly hard on was making sure that the efficiency of the building was really high. And I think what we've achieved here is actually something that sets a new benchmark in terms of building efficiency. We've not yet seen anything globally that is close to what it is that's been designed here.
In a global context where technology has shrunk the world and visual imagery is transmitted across the globe in a millisecond, it's really important to celebrate difference. The tower has a distinctive form, it has an express structure which references our Pacific origins. The curve of the tower references the Waitemata and our maritime past. At the urban level and at the level of the street, we've been really focused on ensuring that the outcome is authentic, uses natural materials, is highly textured, and draws a relationship with the sandstone cliffs of the Waitemata.
This was the place where Maori almost made first contact with the city. They would have drawn their waka up onto the harbour edge and would have traded. This is the place where the world, in fact, sees Auckland for the first time. It is our front door. The way in which we interact with Commercial Bay as we arrive off ferries or buses or off the cruise ships is the first impression of Auckland. It's about the shape of the new Auckland. It's the new offer that people will receive when they arrive. They'll see retail that is globally competitive, public realm which is of the quality of our competitor cities like Sydney and Melbourne, Vancouver, Portland.
It's going to be an absolute flagship for the current transformations that are happening all across the city. But this is the really premier event. Cities are a vector of change. They are a hot point of change, and they go through cycles of losing, of becoming uncompetitive, and life taking off to different places. This is Auckland's time. Auckland has hit a sweet spot on scale and even location. And if we get these things right, we make these places well, Auckland will double down and keep getting better.
We're incredibly optimistic about where the city's heading. I think we've moved from a time, a sort of post-colonial attitude of basic function at minimal cost, and we now expect our investments to transcend function and say something about ourselves. And Commercial Bay is a great example of that, reflection of Auckland as a relevant part of a global story.
It returns a heart, a proper urban heart to Auckland. And the key thing to that is people. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's the crowded streets, the huge increase in pedestrian numbers that we've seen on the back of Britomart and other transit improvements. It's just going to keep going now.